Okay, so Pride Month is coming up for the month of June, and this means that companies are now going to start changing their logo to a rainbow flag, talking about how their products are LGBTQ plus friendly, and trying to get as much woke points for the entire year. What I'm going to be reacting to today is a video by Amir Odom, who is actually, interestingly enough, a gay conservative. So a very unique perspective on what exactly Target, Bud Light, and other brands should do. We actually follow each other on Instagram, and I think he makes phenomenal videos. So let me know in the comments if we should collaborate in the future on a video idea. Let me know, and let's see what he has to say.
Brands sponsoring Pride Month is nothing new. Target has had a Pride collection for over a decade now. Bud Light has been doing gay campaigns since the early 90s, and while nearly every American corporation funds Pride parades or changes their logo to rainbow, this year is a little different. What's changed? I go into depth about this in my last video, but if we're looking at the bigger picture, over the last 3 to 5 years, we have seen a rise in anti-LGBTQ demonstrations, and this is mainly because it's the trans community and drag queens that are targeting children. If there's one thing that we know, children are off limits. So if you want more context on that, be sure to watch my latest video, but we're gonna dive right into this Target situation.
See, I think that's what's so important to note about this LGBTQ plus movement too, is that they're all individuals. They all have, different unique perspectives and such, where I think we like to do this, especially in America, is to group together based on their specific race or gender, right? It's like, oh, all Asian people must think like this, and most commonly, all minorities must think like this in this umbrella of idea. And I'm sure that's exactly what's happening in this LGBTQ plus movement, is that they all have different viewpoints. Obviously, I'm gonna guess that gay people have different perspectives than even lesbian people, and they all may have different perspectives than, let's say, trans people. Look, I can't name all the alphabets, but what I'm trying to say is that each letter probably has their own goals and motivations, and although they may fall under this umbrella, they don't all think that way, and especially if we look at it from the individual level.
Found this video of this man ranting in Target about the Pride collection, and he brings up 2 good points that I think a lot of us can relate to.
Memorial Day weekend. Where is the display supporting and showing homage to our men and women, the military? There's nothing. There's a couple of little made in China patriotic pieces of shit here.
Okay, he brings up a good point here. The Pride collection gets this big, huge display. Black History Month gets this big, huge display. And it's Memorial Weekend, and there's just this little section of American stuff. That is all made.
I think, a lot of these businesses do these things because it's purely for the money reasons, right? Obviously, Target doesn't really care about these types of issues. They're not going to talk about it if it loses them money. So I think in a lot of, trends that we're seeing, especially in our generation, is kind of a lot of like this anti-hate America, or maybe it's just more of an exposure to the history and everything that has happened in America that has turned a lot of people off. No matter kind of the sentiment, there definitely is kind of more of this patriotic feeling compared to years past, and there's a multitude of reasons for that, but I think ultimately a lot of these companies are choosing not to display these things, and instead maybe showing things like a pride flag early for the month of June is purely for money. And obviously we've seen that definitely companies like Bud Light completely turn off their main customer base because of the decisions that they made. But I think a lot of these companies are only moving because of the money. Don't ever think for once like corporations are doing it for altruistic reasons. They did so, then they would have probably done it in the 50s, but you know how people really thought about gay people back then.
In China, ironically. The gays and the blacks, we get so much attention, so much praise, but what about our veterans? What about our army? What about our local service leaders? They're not getting that same amount of praise, and they're the ones protecting us and allowing us to live this freely. So where is their attention at? So I see that point.
This is bullshit. No problem with the Pride section. Take the kids out of it. That's what you have to do.
That right there. He has no problem with the Pride collection, just take the kids out of it. And I think that's where
which is fair, right? I could see if you're a parent why you wouldn't want your kids to be exposed to that. And some people might view that as like a hateful perspective, obviously based on the intentions, but it seems like what this guy is shouting out is that it's don't want kids to be exposed to that, especially when it's front and center when you walk into the store. Whether that, you think that's right or not, I don't know, but I guess I can see where his point is.
And I think that's where a lot of people land. We don't have a problem with the gay community. It's why the gays have been fine for so long. It wasn't until the last 3 to 5 years we've seen a rise Like, we're going back in time to people hating gays, and it's because we can't leave the kids alone. Had Target not done,
and I guess I could see it also from the parents' perspective too, that they view it as kind of like a slippery slope. Even if they really do not care about like gay people or have any malicious intent towards them or anything like that, I could totally see why they might see, you know, drag queens demonstrating in front of kids and talking about LGBTQ in schools is something that they may not want, because it might, you know, influence their kids to think that they might not be something that they are. I am in the personal opinion that people who are gay, people who are lesbian, queer, are born with it. But I could also see why some people may not view it that way and think that, you know, many kids might be influenced in that sense. I think there's also statistics now that are like 40% of Gen Z is LGBTQ plus. I don't know how that compares relatively. Maybe, you know, there's also a different factor that there's way more of an acceptance than like years past. So who knows what is causing a lot of these spikes, but I can see why, you know, parents are worried, especially with kind of like a lot of the influences that are in America right now. So I'm trying to see it from both sides.
not done any of this, had they have just been, here's a pride collection for adults, for when you're at the pride parades, whatever it may be, it would pretty much be fine. I don't think they'd be seeing this much controversy. Now, the reason we're talking about Target is because they are selling a swimsuit, a part of their pride collection, that is made for tucking. The swimsuit comes in sizes extra small to a 4X, and it is meant for adults. However, there are a lot of content creators who stated that the swimsuit was made for children, and that's just not the case. And I thought that was the case. When I heard that they were making tucking swimsuits for children, I was like, what? There's no way. Let me fact check this. Let me look into this. And no, not the case. There is no tucking swimsuits for children that Target is selling. Knowing that the swimsuit is designed for adults, I'm fine with it, just because we've got to start somewhere. Would I much rather people accept who they are in their body, embrace their body, and go about their life? Yes, but that is just not the case. I'd much rather a guy wear this swimsuit than to go through the surgery, chop off their body parts, act like a woman, and then regret it later.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important distinction of someone who's obviously worried more about the kids rather than any hateful, malicious intent towards like the gay community. From my understanding, I believe Amir is gay as well. So it's very interesting to also see like the nuances too, right? Is that just because he's gay doesn't mean he's going to support all these like different gay initiatives that they see in Target, and especially if it's advertised towards kids. No, what he's saying that of course I support the community as someone who's a part of it, but that doesn't mean that we should be able to push it to everyone. So I think that's a very important nuance to see, is that we need to start humanizing people in different groups, especially groups that you're not a part of. Not every single individual that's part of that community, whether it be the Asian community, Black community. No, they all have their different unique perspectives and experiences, and that there's a lot more nuances within that movement. And I think it's actually a lot more racist to assume that, yeah, just because you're a part of this group, you must think this way, kind of like in an umbrella thought system. So that is an important distinction to make, is that, look, you need to talk to people, because you'll see people have a lot more nuance than you think. And just because someone looks that way doesn't mean that you should assume that they think that the media should tell these types of people should think that way.
Like, we're already yelling, don't transition, but now we're gonna yell, don't wear the clothes too. Like, how much are we trying to restrict? How much are we trying to tell other grown adults what to do in this free country? I mean, damn, if a grown man wants to wear a woman's bathing suit, I think that's fine. We already got men wearing Speedos. You're a grown adult, just do you. And like the guy said in the beginning of this video, had Target just left the kids out of it, like left the kids t-shirts, the kids onesies, we pretty much wouldn't be hearing about this. The case of Bud Light. Again, Bud Light has been doing marketing campaigns toward the gays since the early 90s, but this year is different because they did an ad campaign with Dylan Mulvaney. And it's not just that Dylan Mulvaney is a trans person.
So I think, see, that's also an important distinction to make, is that I think Bud Light, especially a lot of the customer base of Bud Light, thinks that this is like the year where they even started talking about or advertising LGBTQ+, but it seems like, you know, that's always has happened. But I guess, like, yeah, like he points out, the biggest distinction is that they brought in a, you know, former a transgender woman, Dylan Mulvaney, to kind of be like the face of it. And I think that was kind of, I guess, the tipping point.
I don't think that really is the issue. The issue is that Dylan advocates for trans kids.
It's day 249 of being a girl, and this video is to all the queer and trans kids and teens out there.
Again, it's the kids that are off limits. It is the kids that people have a lot of problems with. And that ties right into my advice for brands. Leave the trans community alone and leave the drag queens alone. And if you do that, I'm pretty sure you will be fine. Now, the TQ plus community has hijacked Pride, so I would really stay away from all of it. But if you want to celebrate Pride, then I would stick to just adult adult only items and stay away from the trans community and the drag queens because
Interesting. See, so I think that's also what I've seen throughout the years too, is kind of more of like these letters being added to a point where now all they just, they kind of cut it off a little bit and said plus, right? I guess when I was growing up, it was just kind of LGBT, so I'm guessing lesbian, gay, bi, and I think trans. But I think now there's a lot of letters being added to it, and I think that's also kind of like the thing. And I've heard there's obviously contention between some of the groups, right? Between the lesbian, gays, and maybe bis, and also the trans people, because that's especially been hot over the last 2-3 years. I can assume that maybe with all of like this backlash coming, and especially as Amir points out, especially when it's potentially targeted towards kids, how that could maybe reflect on all those different groups, right? And just how we talked about, a lot of people don't really have nuance in that people in different movements think differently, but especially when you start grouping together as like this one umbrella, I can see why kind of the average person would, think that all trans people and all gay people think the same, whereas as Amir is pointing out, there's nuance to it. There's different goals.
Now, it is just extremely toxic in the United States regarding those two communities and how they are marketing themselves towards children. So I would just stay away from that completely. My advice to you, in general, support the brands that you love and spend less time canceling the ones that you hate. We live in a free country for a reason. You're not going to support and agree with every single company in this nation. It's just not going to happen. But I'd love to see us take all this energy that we're spending trying to cancel a brand into pouring into loving the brands that do have and support our values.
That's a great point too. And I think that's also a big hypocrisy that's going on both sides right now. So obviously, a lot of maybe the cancel culture early on was maybe led by the left in general, but now we're also seeing it on the opposite end too, of conservatives who for years have advocated against cancel culture, but now they're doing kind of like the same thing to Bud Light too, right? Where they're really calling in for collective movement of canceling these types of brands, but they're now doing the exact same types of actions of canceling a brand just because it didn't support their beliefs and their values. Also, it's very interesting to see how cancel culture has spread, in the sense that now a lot of people who for years have advocated against cancel culture are now utilizing cancel culture as kind of like this like revenge for all the years. And I think we're seeing that in so many different movements, right? Whether it may be the feminist movement or maybe even, racial movements, that a lot of people are using this kind of fuel of revenge to be able to have equal footing. And look, that's going to be an endless pursuit. That's never going to lead to a good result. Yeah, I think he's right. We just need to focus on the brands that you love and, stop spending your time so much trying to cancel brands and hate things. Just do what you love. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I think that was a great video. It's always very nice to hear these nuanced types of conversations, especially in a lot of movements that maybe a lot of us may not have friends in that movement, or maybe a lot of us don't know many people in an individual level in that movement. And this is exactly why it's so important to have conversations with people that you normally don't. You start learning about a lot of these nuances and stop seeing things in such like a black and white lens. So let me know what you guys think. What do you guys think about this? How woke companies are getting, how, companies are kind of utilizing movements for their own personal gain. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And if you want to see more, like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.